A small, fog-covered town on a chilly autumn night. A few locals sit around a fire, exchanging stories. The tone is eerie as one of the older townsfolk begins to recount the tale of the Widow's Watch, a remote town where, on certain nights, a single candle flickers in the window of an abandoned house. This house is known as the Widow's Watch. No one in town would dare go near it, not since the night Abigail Rowe went mad. Abigail was once a lively, cheerful woman, devoted to her husband, Thomas. They were inseparable, and together, they'd built their life in the old Victorian house at the edge of town. But when war came, Thomas was called away, and Abigail was left to tend the house alone. She promised him she would wait, that she would keep a candle burning in the window until he returned. Months passed, then years, but Thomas never came back. Abigail's friends and neighbors tried to comfort her, telling her that he was likely lost or worse. But Abigail refused to believe it. Every night, she'd light the candle in the window, saying, "When he sees it, he'll know his way home." She became a shadow of her former self, drifting through the empty house, murmuring to herself, endlessly waiting. One stormy night, Abigail heard a soft knock on the front door. Her heart leapt. She was certain it was Thomas. She rushed to open it, only to find a soaked stranger standing on her porch. His face pale as a ghost. His clothes were torn, and he held his hat in his hands, his eyes downcast. "Ma'am," he said, barely a whisper, "I came to tell you. I fought alongside your husband. I saw what happened." Abigail shook her head, refusing to hear it. But the man went on, describing the battle, how he had seen Thomas fall, how they hadn't been able to recover him. Abigail listened in silence, her face blank as her hope crumbled to dust. She closed the door without a word and went back into the house, numb and hollow. From that night on, the townspeople saw Abigail less and less. The candle in her window burned each night without fail, though no one ever saw her light it. Some said she'd gone mad, others whispered that she was still waiting. And then, one night, the candle went out. The neighbors found Abigail's lifeless body sitting in her favorite chair, clutching a letter Thomas had written her before he left. The townspeople buried her, and for years the house sat empty, slowly falling into ruin. No one dared to enter. They all felt the strange, heavy presence that lingered there. But then, one winter, the candlelight returned. The first to see it was a young girl named Lydia, who had ventured near the Widow's Watch on a dare. She saw the flickering light in the window and ran back, breathless and pale, claiming she'd heard a voice whisper her name. The townspeople were unsettled, but they brushed it off as a childish imagination. Until others began to see it, too. At first, it was just a candle burning faintly in the window, but soon strange things began happening. People walking by at night reported hearing footsteps echoing from inside, slow and steady, as though someone were pacing up and down the halls. Others swore they heard Abigail's voice, softly humming the lullaby she used to sing when she was waiting for Thomas. One night, a man named Edwin, skeptical and emboldened by drink, decided to see for himself. He made his way to the Widow's Watch and peered through a cracked window, hoping to catch a glimpse of something ghostly. As he looked in, he saw the faint outline of a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, holding a candle. "Abigail?" he whispered, almost mockingly. The figure turned, her eyes hollow and black, her face twisted with grief and anger. She raised her hand, beckoning him to come inside. Edwin stumbled back, his courage vanishing, and ran down the path, vowing never to return. But the Widow's Watch didn't like being ignored. One by one, people in town began to have strange dreams. They'd see Abigail standing at the foot of their beds, her face pale and expressionless, holding her candle and asking, "Have you seen him? Have you seen my Thomas?" The dreams left them exhausted, haunted, as though Abigail's restless spirit were trying to drag them into her grief. Then, one foggy autumn evening, a young couple named Jonathan and Emma arrived in town. They'd heard the house was for sale, cheap due to the rumors. Jonathan was practical, laughing off the tales of ghosts and curses. Emma was nervous but followed him, hoping for a fresh start in a peaceful town. They moved in and, for a few days, everything was quiet. But on their first night, they found a candle on the windowsill of the upstairs bedroom, untouched but somehow lit. Jonathan extinguished it, brushing it off as a prank. But the next night, the candle was lit again, its flame flickering softly against the glass. Emma began hearing whispers in the night, calling her by name. She'd wake to the feeling of cold fingers brushing her cheek, the faint scent of flowers lingering in the air. When she told Jonathan, he laughed, assuring her it was her imagination. But one night, as they lay sleeping, Emma awoke to the sound of soft footsteps coming from the hallway. She turned, and there was Abigail, standing at the end of their bed, her eyes dark and hollow. Holding the candle with a fierce grip. "Have you seen him?" Abigail asked, her voice low and broken. Emma tried to scream, but no sound escaped her. She felt herself paralyzed, unable to look away from those empty, haunted eyes. Jonathan finally woke, but when he tried to move, he too found himself frozen. Abigail drifted closer, her voice a soft hiss. "He's lost. I need to find him." The couple stayed silent, transfixed in horror, until Abigail, her face twisted with sorrow, turned away and vanished into the shadows. Only then did the spell break, leaving them gasping and trembling. The next morning, they packed their things, abandoning the house and leaving town without a word. To this day, the widow's watch stands empty, but the candlelight still burns in the window on certain nights, flickering faintly in the darkness. People in town swear that, on those nights, they hear a soft, desperate voice whispering from the empty rooms. "Have you seen him?" the voice asks. And as the candlelight dances in the window, it almost looks as though someone is there, waiting and watching, forever searching for the love that will never return.